How's it going, folks? Back at you with another cryptocurrency related video. Of course, I'd like to start today off by showing this really important how many gallons can you get with one Bitcoin in 2009, and you could get 0.011 gallons for one Bitcoin, and then in 2019 you can get 2,798 gallons, as opposed to $1 in 2009 you were accumulating 0.38 gallons of gas, and now of course you can get a whole 0.34 gallons of gas. Really a visual interpretation depending on what state you are in, of course, but I'm sure that they're going off of the US and all these other things. The price of gas goes up and adjusted for all those other variables, but still very interesting, no question about it, about when you want to talk about the dollar and the spending power of a dollar and just what happens over 1 decade, which is very interesting. And of course, today I would like to discuss some of the recent price action that we've been seeing happening with Bitcoin. But first, make sure that you guys smash that like button. Of course, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel if you are not already. Today, I think that it's very interesting to talk about how the bulls and the bears are really fighting for control over the future of Bitcoin at this $10,000 range, as right now we're really witnessing the fight play out. I would definitely like to speak on this recent activity that we've been seeing happening over the past 24 hours. We saw the price going all the way down to 9,962, and then right after basically firing its way up as high as 10,127, where of course we have been able to manage to stay at those levels for some for a little bit of time being. And it is very interesting as we've been seeing the overall indicators of many influencers sort of split right down the middle. And of course, plenty of people out there who have been talking about the potential to see a $7,000. Everybody talking about the $8,500 Bitcoin meme, the bears, the rumors of the bears, and of course the rumors of the bulls that are out there, of course. But and I understand the skepticism that's out there at the current moment. I mean, we were rejected multiple times off of the 12,000. Of course, it was very difficult for us to overcome. And now, of course, we are at the point now where we will either see further capitulation in the overall Bitcoin trend, or we will eventually see the price. I think that a lot of people are just holding on to their Bitcoin, waiting to see what happens with China at the moment. I think that right now the situation with the trade war and all these other variables are definitely on people's minds. They're very not as quick to part with their Bitcoin due to what I've noticed, at least, is when the all-time highs of 2017, 2018 happened, we witnessed a massive sell-off, and Bitcoin went down to $3,000 when people stopped talking about it. But this time is a little bit different because we came from the $3,000, and then the overall revival of Bitcoin has sort of turned that narrative on its head, which has of course brought in an entirely new category of hodlers, and of course an entirely new population of people who are now involved in the space who otherwise wouldn't have been. I'd also like to point out, this is an interesting article right here, which talks about only 800,000 Bitcoin wallets hold more than one BTC, claims and analysis, which is pretty interesting information right there. So it goes on to talk about how people that have these wallets that are holding less than a full Bitcoin, and I think that is very telling especially when we always like to talk about the concept of, $10,000. You have to think about, in the grand scheme of things, on a global scale, how many people actually even have $10,000 to their name in the world. That is the top 5% of the world population right there, and let alone people who are risky enough to actually have that $10,000 in a asset class that could essentially drop 50% overnight. So that is sort of the risk reward benefit when we talk about Bitcoin, and of course when we look at the developing space that is of course the cryptocurrency space. So before we go any further, of course, remember this video is for educational purposes only. I am not your financial advisor. This is merely my opinion for entertainment, educational purposes only. I'm not your dad. And of course, when I speak on these different things that are happening, I always invite you to do your own research and never trust a YouTube content creator when they talk about these things. But still, inflation, silently robbing you of purchasing power since 1913, $20 in 1998 get you a full bag of groceries. In 2005, it's getting smaller. In 2017, you're just getting the dog food now. You're not even eating, and that's very interesting when you consider. In 2005, if you just waited a few years, you could have spent that $20 on some Bitcoin, and right now you'd be sitting pretty with a couple Satoshis, a few more Satoshis than you could buy today. It just goes to show you currencies getting lost in the dust and all these other things. But still, my indicators are still pointing towards further backtrack of the price. I could easily see us dropping down to that 9,500 point, especially when we want to take into consideration the fact that the bulls, the bulls are sort of getting worn out. The bears are sort of gaining on them, at that same point, but it will definitely matter right now. It's basically whether or not we break below this line right here is a huge, it is really going to be interesting. And of course, it's definitely going to be exciting to see if we can actually get a good sale going. Personally, I know that plenty of people are still waiting on the sidelines, expecting to have that swing trade and essentially scalp the value and basically accumulate. And just recently, only a few minutes ago, watching this live, we actually watched the price drop below 10K, but the fight actually is on that for that level right there, and we will witness the history in the making almost before our eyes. Probably by the time you guys will be watching this, you'll probably be seeing Bitcoin below that $10,000 range, the 4-digit Bitcoin, where plenty of people do have their buy orders set, expecting to accumulate. But I do expect us to move sideways for the time being. I really think that we'll probably drop down, test those, that 9,500, and then probably shoot all the way back up, possibly even bouncing back and forth, trading sideways. We'll see the 10,500. We'll see that contest sort of play itself out. And it will be an interesting ride. We'll see how the news continues to develop itself. But I do think that depending on what we see happen with the situations with the global recession looming, all these other things could be good news for Bitcoin. It might be chump change to try and sell and then rebuy. You could be lost in the dust, but I don't think that that's going to happen anytime soon. But it's still interesting to see. Of course, I am stacking my Satoshis. I know many of you are as well. Of course, make sure you don't let anybody know how much you have down in the comments, or don't tell anybody how much you have. That's a lot like telling somebody how much money you have in your bank account. It's just something that you don't do. But it will be interesting to see how a lot of these different variables ultimately play out. As we see, of course, quantitative easing is also one of those things. We've actually seen that there are plans to continue quantitative easing, which will inevitably have more of an effect on depreciating the dollar, which of course does have its residual backlash. people talking about, we might be testing 11,300. I mean, it is unknown, but I suppose we will see. We'll keep you guys up to date on these things, backed by math, most powerful computer network in the world. And then, of course, the dollar as thin air. But, we will see. I hope you guys have enjoyed this content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.